Okay, cool. So yeah, very nice talks around styling again, performance, and a few things. Yeah, server-driven UI, right? I do have some questions. I think even the audience have some questions, but let's start with probably the new kid in the town, the cool kid in the town. And I think people on my right know about it. So React Strict DOM. Would love to hear thoughts. I mean, it was just recently announced, I think 3 days back, and yeah, I won't share my thoughts. I was about to, but yeah, would love to hear thoughts if you folks had a chance to look at it. And what are your initial thoughts? Is it a gimmick or is it a futuristic thing? Probably we can start with Ayush. You want to go first? Yeah.
So I just read a couple of threads regarding it. I just saw, a brief overview, but it looks like they're unifying the APIs for React Native and the web, right? So that looks like a step in right direction. Eventually, I feel like the best code is no code at all. So, and I live by that principle. So I think if we can unify those APIs, that would be a step in right direction.
No code as in the no code thing, or like go back to the farms?
I mean, so uh, the more you, the lesser you write the code, the lesser you have to debug, the lesser you have to work on it and maintain it, right? So that's a great thing, right?
Interesting. Yeah. Love that thought. Ashadip.
Yeah. So since it was just released 3 days ago, since it was announced that, I just had a very brief amount of time to skim through the details. And yes, my thoughts align with him as well that good code is no code. Basically, lesser code is good code, right? And if we can say a lot of things, if we can do a lot of things in a very less amount of code, yes, that would be a great thing. And I think it's futuristic. Yes.
Interesting. Makes a lot of sense. I think I'll head out to Shivraj next, but I'll change the question a bit because I know him personally and he has been working on apps that has like millions of users on a daily basis. And you have been working on React Native and React as well. Do you feel that there was a pain of people jumping back and forth between React Native and React developers coming to you and saying, no, this is React Native, I don't do it, and React Native developers doing the same thing for React? Do you feel that it'll go away? And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the APIs are different, the core APIs. So there's a pain always when we jump from React Native to React, or either React to React Native, specifically because React is basically for web and then React Native is for mobile. The core APIs are different. That's where even with React Native web, we can't specifically create application which works similar to React in web platform. So React strict DOM, I mean, it would help in terms of like bringing those APIs closer for different platforms. Uh, Same again as Ayush or Anshdeep mentioned, I have just skimmed through like the tweets that are there and also some experiments that people have done it. It's exciting, but at the same time, a little skeptical about how the APIs would work rather for different platform. I mean, the focus is mainly on the web APIs, right? So how those APIs going to work for different platforms, that I'm a little skeptical about.
Yeah, I think I have been hearing the same from the creator of Native Wind as well. Even internally, we had something similar. Like we were React Native first, and then React Native Web was the adoption of React Native on the web. But now it's just the opposite. It's React Web first, and React Native is trying to adopt that, and that brings in all the problems of React Web. Something like context-based styling, right? Like CSS directly supports that, and now we'll have to use JavaScript to add that layer. So that, yeah, pain, I can feel that. Yeah. Great. I think question for both of you are slightly different because you both have been working on GlueStack. And so what's the impact on the library authors when it comes to this? Would you like go back and do a hackathon to change all your code that you have written in past 1 year?
Yeah, so I was just talking about this only with the folks. So libraries are also library authors are also skeptical about, like, even we are like I'm skeptical about migrating to the new incoming changes from React Native team. so because in a span of an year, a lot of things are already changing, and it's a very volatile environment right now. And I'm not sure, like personally, I think I would like to wait for like 2 or 3 months, like see things how things are going, and then maybe things can be decided later.
I think Shivraj made a very good point that most of the pain points comes from the as React Native State survey as well stated that most of the developers come from the web API. Also, learning that we at BlueStack as well, we try to make some adjustment to onboard them easily, but React Strict DOM actually does it very better. Uh, it is still in early stages, but I would see it like getting more adaptation. So we as a library author can also work on that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I hope people in the audience are aware about React Strict DOM. Yes? Yeah? Okay. Cool. I'm not supposed to share my views, but I think this is one of the tipping points in the React ecosystem where things change. And if this happens, then this is going to change the entire game of React ecosystem. There's not going to be two different teams for mobile and web, or React and React Native. It's just one single team. It's that big of a change. So yeah, keep your eyes on it. Great. So next question is about Expo Router V3. Uh, and I'm not sure if people in the panel have worked on it. And comparing that with the next app router as well. It's similar, but do we like give up completely on Next.js and just use Expo for everything, or are there cases when and where we should use Next.js or Remix, for example, or is Expo now in 2024 that powerful to be used like everywhere? We can start maybe some random people. Yeah, okay, maybe Rohit.
Yeah, so I've tried Expo Router for my personal application, and so it's I feel it's like very close to next uh, how next app router works, but like there are few bugs I faced while building with it, and sometimes the things I expect to work the way they should work, it doesn't do that. So like uh, Expo Router is a good thing. I think V4 is also coming very soon, or I'm not sure it's launched already, but I think they will be addressing more of the pain points there.
Yeah, so one of the creator of Expo, right? Expo router, Evan, right? So he was in on one podcast. So he stated that in V4 there won't be a V4, there will be a entire new framework around it. So they will also introduce bundle splitting and other next features as well. So I would suggest that if you are using React Net only webs, then for now next is a step bit. If you are building something universal, so that comes with like deep linking and all features which are there in Expo router, so that helps as well. So if
Yeah.
you are using universal, that's way to.
Makes sense. You should tell that to me in the stand-ups too. Okay.
I
Yeah.
completely agree with Vivaj. I mean, if you want to go the web route, you just go with Next.js at the moment. Expo Router has a lot of potential. Definitely, when you're building a universal app or something for mobile and web, you should go with that. But again, it brings in the ecosystem around it as well, the Expo ecosystem, which binds you as well, specifically to use certain things about it. So obviously, if you want to go with universal app, just go with it. But yeah, for web, I would still go with Next.js.
Yeah, so I have not worked much with Next.js, but I have my views on Expo that there are some limitations that come with it, and I feel like it's a little less more scalable as it comes with an environment, as Shivraj has suggested. There are things that come up, there are limitations in it, and I feel like Expo is something that I would still be a little like hiccup there to maybe use it, to go forth with it. I would feel like there's a hiccup in that.
Makes sense.
Well, I come from a web background, so I've been using Next.js pretty extensively. So looking at it, it looked fair. When I just had a look at it, it looked fairly comparable. The syntax, the way they have abstracted things. So in a way, I believe they are trying to standardize. We're living in a world of abstractions, one thing on top of the other, right? So I felt like this is very much analogous to what we have in Next.js. But as you mentioned, there's in-house support for deep link as well. But well, I can tell you from the Next.js side, well, there's not, and I had to bear the pain of manually adding that. So that looks promising to me.
Makes sense. I could like double down on this question a bit, but maybe later, maybe offline. Yeah, for everybody, because I'm curious. I want to know some answers. Maybe later. I'll move on to using React Native beyond, say, Android and iOS. We have discussed a bit on the website, right? Maybe for desktop apps. Is that still a thing, or people like? Do you guys choose Electron plus React and not React Native, or maybe Tori, for example, which is I think Rust based? So the question is React Native for desktop apps or something else?
Well, here's my hot take. I think that depends on case to case basis. So, for instance, if I have my React Native application running and I have a bunch of developers working on a React Native app for a fairly long time, I would maybe prefer to have React Native for Windows, right? But for someone like me, if I have been working on a web application, refining it over the years, then I think the faster solution and more wiser solution would be to go for Electron. Again, I'm not against one or the other, but I feel like that might depend on case to case basis.
Totally agreed with what he said. It would depend on case to case basis. But as a React Native developer, I would feel much more comfortable making applications, making web applications using React Native. As I'm very much familiar with it, I know if there are like a little on add ons, I will be able to take those up, as in compared with the taking up Electron. And if for instance I'm a developer who's not aware of what Electron is, it would be a lot that would be required to take over Electron and then move forth with it. And if I know React Native, I would most probably just go forth with it.
Yeah, I think
So
I'll
that would
just
be
interrupt
on
there
that. Yeah.
for both of you. I think it's coming. The answer is coming from your personal experience side.
Yeah.
That's totally obvious. But the question also has a part wherein can you maybe share your thoughts on the stability of React Native for Windows or macOS, if you guys have any idea. Otherwise, it's totally okay.
For Windows and macOS, I wouldn't have a lot of opinion with React Native, but yes, I think we can have a discussion about it offline.
Ayush, have you worked?
Well, as for the Electron part, well, I had some experience looking into ways we can port our application to Electron, and it from the I can judge it from the performance lens. Well, performance wasn't that great, so that's something I acknowledge. But I would be curious to explore how React Native for Windows would scale for performance.
Makes sense. I think that's official by Microsoft. Yeah.
I think my personal view would be if a desktop app is an add-on on top of like web and mobile app, then definitely go with React Native or tvOS or macOS. But if it's a separate application where you're targeting a different audience specifically to that platform, I would still go with a different code base for that.
Okay. So would you use React Native for that, or React for desktop apps?
Right now, I think React,
Okay.
Electron, or maybe.
Yeah, something similar to what Slack does.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Any views on that? You would?
I personally don't have much experience with it, but I would like to see like React Native being used on Mac OS and Windows as well. Mostly, even if we see that universal aspect, right? So most of the time we don't actually share the whole code base; we just share the components. So it might be great to share the code component library or something like that to TVS, and that would work if that work.
Yeah, the question is very subjective to, yeah, like as Ayush mentioned, the use case that you have. And if I'm building straight away for only one of those platforms, maybe it macOS or Windows. It depends on bunch of factor, my experience, or my team's experience, and then like if I already have something ready for shipping. So that's one case. But yeah, Microsoft is already pushing for React Native on Windows, so that's a good backing for that. So maybe in future, that might be the go-to way of for building for a Windows application. Uh, on the macOS front, I don't have much idea about that. What's happening? But I've seen some applications out there on Twitter as well. Like they have been building with React Native itself, so people are using it, but not widely adopted. And Tauri is a new thing that has gained a lot of traction currently, and the GitHub stars performance report also they were on second position, I think. And I've seen that, but they are not. I didn't find it attractive enough to try it out. But yeah,
Interesting. I think that also boils down to what you see on social media and versus what the actual life of developers are and what you use on a daily basis, right? Again, I think circles back to my first thing, like gimmick versus futuristic, right? I mean, what you see on Twitter and LinkedIn, that might not be the mainstream at all. Like, and people on Twitter also say this quite often, that 75% of the websites are built using WordPress even today. Yeah, so that's weird. One last question, again on the same lines, gimmick or futuristic. This is a bit related to React Native because I've seen people doing React Native plus Apple Vision OS. Would love your thoughts on like React Native first and maybe Apple Vision Pro altogether. Yeah.
yeah. So it's good to see like React Native being used in a lot of places, like even Vision OS. And like even we experimented with that, right? So that's nice. But in my personal opinion, like the Vision OS, the whole project, it's a gimmick. Like I don't want like player one scenario, something like that, like living inside of Goggle, right? So,
Uh, yeah, somewhat agreed with Rohit. Like, it's still too early to like say how people are going to use it, or just throw it away as a another toy tool. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Thoughts?
I mean, I don't have any thoughts on terms of like the actual product, but in terms of the technology building applications on the Vision OS as well, everything boils down to, I mean, whether it is Mac OS version of it or the Windows OS version of it, everything is like people are forking it and adding a support on top of it. It's not particularly building specifically to that platform. We are kind of bringing the support to those platforms, not particularly working on the platform APIs, right? So it's just a support that is added, but definitely there are a lot of potential towards it. But yeah, it's more on like as we divulge more into building applications with that, we'll be able to find out more in terms of how the capabilities are in terms of using it.
Makes sense. And before we move forward, I have a follow-up question on the same lines for you three folks, maybe. React Native like lagged behind in the announcement when iOS came out or Android came out, and iOS and Android basically had a head start of like few years. And with Vision OS, I mean, Vision OS was announced and React Native for Vision OS is announced at the, I mean, within a gap of like 2 weeks, right? Would we see like more React Native apps on Vision OS than iOS apps, native apps?
Maybe I think it's also boils down to the ecosystem and also the community around it. Uh, React Native community has been, I mean, moving very fast in the last couple of years. Whatever things comes out next into the world in terms of technology, React Native community is really adapting very fast. I mean, with the last major update, the new architecture, after that it has like evolving very fastly. I mean, in terms of any kind of support, whether it is for different technology or adapting to new products out there. So yeah, it's evolving very fast. So I think we'll go in that direction.
Yeah. So about Vision OS, I feel like it would be a futuristic thing with React Native because, as you said, it was announced almost at the same time with a difference of 2 weeks. And I feel like it is something futuristic because there is, I feel, a user base for it. There are people who are working on React Native as well and who would be somewhere or the other interested in what is VisionOS offering. How is it working? What is it offering? And how can we leverage those things in our own code base or maybe our own applications or maybe a totally new application? So I feel it would get some sort of user support in that and it would be futuristic in that sense.
Okay, makes sense.
Well, as you mentioned, it only took 2 weeks for them to roll out React Native for VisionOS. That's the beauty of it. I think the pace at which they are developing, it's fairly commendable. So at the same time, I think having React Native for VisionOS definitely unblocks a lot of teams and a lot of engineers to actually put their applications and make them compliant for VisionOS. And why not? Of course, they will be tapping into that market for VisionOS. And as for the VisionOS, well, uh, here's what I feel like. Maybe uh, in terms of productivity, maybe it's a step in right direction, and I think maybe making us connected in a way, but at the same time, I feel maybe it's making it disconnected to the closed ones. So that's how it rolls.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the use cases that I saw yesterday on Instagram, an artist, like wall painting artist, was using Vision Pro. So she had her traces, like the grayscale traces, and she had put it inside Vision Pro on one of the walls, and she was painting on top of it, basically tracing her rough sketch on a real wall, and the painting came out to be like really amazing. I think that's one of the use cases which never existed before. But I totally agree with like the matrix world that we are seeing with the step one towards that, right? So yeah, makes a lot of sense. We'll open up for the audience. I think they had some interesting questions which they couldn't ask. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just a second. I think we'll give you the mic for the remote audience. You are audible enough here.
Hey, hi guys. First of all, a great talk by all of you, right? So, uh, my question goes to Ayush, basically, because since you have talked about pushing code onto the fly, right? So, since you talked it, I got your basic principles of it, saying that there is a fixed contract between
Yes.
client and server, and that's how you coordinate, right? You communicate,
Right.
right? So my point comes on to the very basic fundamental saying that we already had a lot of code push technologies like Microsoft Code Push or Firebase
Of
Remote
course.
Config
Yeah.
that did the job very well, right?
Mm.
So in which case do you actually end up using the fixed term contract instead of pushing the bundle directly on the fly, where you do not have to depend on a fixed term contract?
So suppose there's a sev one, right? I push something for a search component and it's not working, right? Uh, I would rather prefer this capability to have this capability on myself and my service to roll out a fix as soon as possible than to maybe code push for that matter, right? So that's how I feel like it makes the thing really powerful. At the same time, suppose if I have the capability to change the layout on the fly, I have the entire thing, right? So it unlocks a whole new world of personalization, right? So based on the state of the user in the system, I can push them a different UI, which maybe I wouldn't be able to do with the code push, because hey, with code push it would either be the older build or the newer build, right? But suppose if I have 10 different tests, 10 different personalized layouts, then of course server driven UI would be a great choice.
Okay, so you mean wherever the content is changing and deployment is your priority? I mean, the fastest deployment is your priority. But what about I'm just trying to wonder out, because the UI is only the what users see it, but there's anyway always underlying network calls a business logic written, right? How
Right.
you will you be able to push that? Is it possible?
Yes. So, well, my talk only talked about the UI part of UI side of things, of course. But imagine we have this capability of running the deriving and running the actions on the fly. So if I want to change the API endpoint on the fly, well, I would simply be tapping into the endpoint of my generic fire API action. So it's responsible for firing any API, any URL that I give. So, or maybe I want to poll on something, right? So I just provide a polling endpoint and it would be able to do that. So it's not just UI on the fly, but yeah, actions on the fly are also possible. So it makes it really powerful.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Isn't it just exactly like React server components? How different? I mean, I just enlighten me with like how is it different with RSCs?
Well, in a fairly large organization, I feel like having a contract is really important, right? So the biggest advantage that what I felt like with server-driven UI is having the same contract. So backend and client, they're speaking the same language. So if I make a change to my interface, that will eventually be cascaded to their layer as well. That's what I feel is the biggest advantage over RACs.
Yeah, next question. Can we pass the mic to him? We can keep the one of the mics there. Yeah.
Hey, so if you compare the Flutter and React Native, so even though the Flutter is getting more stars on GitHub, if you compare the new architecture, so the performance still is low compared to Flutter. So how you see the future of the React Native? And the second point, the future for the cross-platform applications will be the WebAssembly or still the Flutter or a React Native? Thank
Okay,
you.
good question. I didn't get your name.
Hari.
Hari. Okay, Hari. Who wants to take this question? Not me.
No, no,
no. We are not doing that here.
I have 7 years experience in the React Native. I'm core hard believer in the React Native, but now see the
we are
things
not
that-
we are not biased. You can have your seat. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
so much for the question. I watched this very nice video by Varun Maya just 2 days back that I also shared it in my Slack channel. It says that don't get married to technologies, and we keep saying that over and over again at GeekyAnts and also at our meetups. In fact, we used to have Flutter and React Native meetups both at the same time. The first part used to be React Native, and the second part used to be Flutter. And in the panel, we used to have this question, what Hari just asked. I have some views. I think if we go deeply technical, both the architectures are very different. One may be good for mobile, like games or animations, while the other might be good for like native integrations, what's available. So it boils down to it depends, without taking sides, but also like as Ayush and few other folks mentioned on the panel that what's your like skill sets are. If you are a JavaScript developers and if you want to build a startup, just go ahead and build that in whatever ways that you know, whatever skill set. uh, and I think answering to this question here on the stage, there is a high possibility of going wrong because most of us are React and React Native developers, and it wouldn't be fair for answering this question without having any Flutter expertise over here. I hope we all agree on that. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Probably in the Flutter meetup, and we can bring in some React Native folks, and then have probably set up a ring here and put them in a boxy ring. Yeah. Yeah. Who wants to take it? Wasm fans. Yeah. Okay, I have some experience. So when we were building a design tool, it's you can sit down, Hari. Thank you. Yeah. So Figma is built using Wasm. That's a very specific use case of using Wasm. So if you have something like old 8-bit games like Contra or Mario, you can easily use Wasm and put it inside the browser. Uh, if you want to get down to the memory allocation level, the processing, parallel processing, and all those things, definitely use it. Figma wanted to build a browser inside a browser, and that's why they wrote everything from scratch because they didn't trust the Chrome engine enough, or the differences between the Firefox engine and all these things. They built their own. They just used a 2D rendering layer and put their own C++ logic, and they're using it. And that makes perfect sense for some companies like Figma. For web apps, for mobile apps, I don't think for business apps it makes sense for flows and all those things. Even for games, we have React Native Skia, for example. That's very good, and you can use it from the JavaScript layer. If you talk about static Hermes is the next generation of Hermes engine, which has performed like better than native code. So I think again using JavaScript and betting on JavaScript is a good thing. Wasm has its own place on using the existing ecosystem and whatnot. So again, it depends. Like comparing Flutter with React Native or Wasm with JavaScript or static Hermes, it's very subjective, I would say. Long
Yeah,
answer.
thank you.
Yeah.
So
All right.
I have one more. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So as you said, the React Native you use for Vision Pro. So the image processing, everything happened on the JavaScript side, or still we have to write on the C++ as the libraries as OpenCV or something. So what do
Yeah, so everything is on the JavaScript side itself. I mean, ultimately it boils down to native layer, but yeah, whatever the code we write, it's from the JavaScript layer itself.
so but still, if you see the JavaScript ecosystem is more the front end layer, right? So there is not much on the image processing, or even though if you see the entire Vision Pro, the more sensors and the cameras are there. So end of day, we have to do the image processing, right? So how much is efficient? Or,
Yeah, that's what I mean. The APIs around it so far has been built just to use the APIs which is available for React Native so far. So the forked version of React Native that the call stack has built for Vision Pro is just a forked version of React Native, not specific to using the Vision Pro APIs, but just to build out an application in the Vision Pro which we can just have a view of.
Thank you.
Which I really noticed that which works very well for WebAssembly compared to the code that we write in JSX or JavaScript. Like the first one is performance when you do with respect to GPU, any mathematical calculation that you do, right? Always works well whenever you use a WebAssembly, right? Instead of JavaScript, anything that you in JavaScript works well when you're only playing with the UI or the network layer part of it, not the CPU processing part of it.
Makes sense, yeah.
Right. So in our one of the old project where I worked on that, only just to do the mathematical calculation, right? We translated ourselves into WebAssembly part of it, and that gave us a huge impact in production.
Yeah. Even this company that does camera library from Austria, Vision Camera, that uses a lot of C++. That guy, Mark, the CEO of Mariello, he also built a crypto library, and the crypto calculation happens on the C++ layer because obviously calculations are faster on C++. So makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Some of the React Native also use the Rust for the Web3, all the calculation networking. So yeah, that is happening.
I think we can go on and on with the list of technologies, but yeah, don't use something that is hot. Use something that makes sense for you, I would say. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
Hello, my name is Vinayak. Actually, I'm new to React Native, so I have created an app using React Native Expo. It's almost completed, but its size of that app is almost 150 MB. It's too high for that kind of project. So I tried so many things on Google and how to reduce size and all. So I just need some suggestions to reduce that size.
Who wants to take it?
Some of my senior told me to shift to React Native CLI, so it will be less. But is there any suggestions?
Yeah, I think it mostly because of the modules that might be using. I mean, maybe the boilerplate code that you have selected, it had a lot of third-party.
I'm using
modules.
BlueStack.
Sorry, not particular. I mean, I'm just saying because you init your project from the Expo, right? Maybe you're using a boilerplate which has a lot of Expo modules or pre-built on to that. So just check which are the modules that you're not using, because a lot of modules are built in when you're using boilerplate code, the third-party modules or the Expo modules that comes with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it used to be like the bundle size that you're saying the app APK size. It used to be a big problem 3 years back. Expo, when they announced their config plugins, they also announced that they are going like a lot smaller on the APK and IPA file size. So check the version maybe. And GlueStack UI is on the JS layer, so it does not add anything beyond yeah some KBs. So not 150. It's like way beyond. It's like 300x. Not because of GlueStack UI for sure.
No, I'm just saying I faced a similar situation with building my application. I created a small application. It just had one screen and it does a bunch of calculation and still it has a like 120 MB APK. So even I'm not, I left it and I moved on.
So he didn't want to answer. He wanted to empathize.
So I'll give you one working solution probably. Whenever you generate a EPK, you get two SO files, 8086 and ARM processor. Okay, you will have to Google it out that how do we delete, because most of the mobile phones, even in India or in US, works only on ARM processor, not an Intel 8086. So you remove the Intel 806 SO files, right? Just figure out how do we delete those SO files. It will trim down your APK just by flat 50%. Just give it a try.
Yeah, more questions? Maybe last couple of questions, yeah.
So hi guys, hi everyone. My name is Shanu. So last from 6 months, I'm working on React Native. So I'm still in confusion, like what styling library I need to use. Like Rohit and Viraj were telling about React Native style and Tailwind and GlueStack also. So what is the best kind of thing like I need to use for the styling? I know like there is no best kind of thing for styling, but still if I would need to choose only one library for styling, what would that be and why?
I also empathize with this problem. Maybe you guys have solution because yeah, I think fragmentation is. What's your name?
Sharanu.
Sharnum.
Sharanu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, this has been the problem with the React ecosystem. Earlier, it was the state management that got sorted with use state, and now we have styling library in React Native. Yeah, would love to. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ashit.
So for styling, I have a personal preference of using native base. It's very easy to use, it's very quick to understand, and I feel like even as a beginner, I had started off as a React Native developer. And to pick on the properties, to pick on the changes that have been made in native base, and to understand what all is doing functioning as what, it is very easy to understand that. And as a developer, it was a very smooth experience for me to go with that. So I would suggest that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so native base is no longer maintained. Yeah.
GlueStack, right?
No, she was mentioning right native base. So native base is no longer maintained. Like no future updates will be there. So we have pivoted to GlueStack right now. So it has a similar API. Just some features are trimmed down that had like performance that increase performance benefits. So you should use GlueStack if you are going that way. Or if you're just learning, I think just make your application with pure React Native. Don't use any styling and understand the pain points. Then use styling. Then
Yeah,
you
I do
will
understand
appreciate it more.
because
Yeah.
I built a whole app with a style sheet only, core
Yeah.
CSS. So I know the pain behind it. So that is why question.
So you can now.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Rohit. Yeah. So, I mean, what are the pain points? Just match it with the libraries, what's out there. And I would suggest that use something stable coming from a credible source. Uh, I'm looking at Stylex by Meta, for example. That's by Meta, and that is paired with React Strict DOM, for example. So high hopes on that. Second is Native Wind, which is a very good selling solution. That's by Expo. These two are high on the list and coming from a credible source, and that's very important. What Rohit built is very good. It's experimental. That's what he mentioned in his talk. So if he says that he's going to maintain it, and in the like maybe in the next survey he puts it out there with the React Native survey and people start using it, then it makes a lot of sense. Maybe yeah. So depending on like if you understand the library and if you can fork it at any point, then go ahead and use any library, I would say, right? So yeah, these are some of the points that make sense to, I mean, parameters to judge when what to use, right? Yeah, he had a question.
Hello, Ayush. Actually, my question is specifically related to you.
Yes.
Basically, we talked about state synchronization between server and client. So wouldn't it be a good idea to use STMX instead of React or Next.js?
Sorry, what was your question again?
We talked about state synchronization between client and server.
Mhm.
Like instead of maintaining multiple states, we can have only one state maintained by server. In React, we do the same thing, but we keep a state of in client side as well. So it's kind of duplication of state just to synchronize. So if we use STMX, its selling concept is obviously your state is going to be synchronized automatically and handled by server.
Interesting, because well, here's what I feel like would be a right approach. So if you think about it, well, if you want to synchronize the state, right, what if you are able to share a same construct of action between client and server? So if your client and server speak the same language of actions, that hey, I understand that this action is supposed to make this modification in the state, right? So that will unify that bridge, right? So and that's what we had been doing. So if you have, let's say, create user action, right? You want to create a new onboard a new user to your platform. Well, what you would be doing, a client would be sending the request with this specific action, and this specific action only accepts a certain contract, which is your interface, and then that again will be shared between client and server. So yeah, that's how I feel like would be a right way.
Actually, I was just worried about like bloatware comes with React. Like you have to use Redux, and if application grows, you have to use global management system. Even if we skip Redux, we use context.
Yes.
But still, we have lots of like bloatwares, lots of JavaScript, and even if we render it on server,
that actually depends, right? That is the cost you pay for the convenience, right? For a better developer experience, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's a difference actually.
Because of course, I mean, applications have been growing consistently, right? It's fair to say that we are shipping lots of JavaScript now, but that's the cost. You have to decide whether or not you are willing to pay that cost, because you have to understand your target audience. So if your target audience maybe is running on a older runtime, let's say we're talking about Chrome 38, and maybe a Chrome 38 user would be running on Windows 8 machine with 1 GB of RAM, right? So I mean, for that use case, I would rather prefer something else. But if I understand that my browser share is coming from Chrome 100 plus, then I would expect them to have a better performance, right?
It's yes, and it's all kind of like depends on the project requirements
Case
and
basis, yeah.
the team.
Cannot generalize, but yeah, depends on case basis.
Thank you.
I think yeah, one last question, yeah, we can take.
Hi, my name is Deepak Yadav. I am 3 months old React Native developer, and I have so much issue in styling, because most of time I get work for styling. So I want most of time I try to use a third party library in our styling, but my tech lead said to use custom CSS. So using third party library is good, or we should use custom CSS?
I think yeah.
I mean, it depends on the ease of building the components. I mean, obviously, when you're building a component with the default styling that comes with React Native, the style sheet, obviously you don't get a overhead, but at the same time, cost of building the components are more, right? You have to style every component from the scratch. But when you're using a third-party library, which is better to build, or even you get customization over top of it, right? the cost of development at the same time shipping the development becomes much easier and faster.
Yeah, but technically it said it's make our app is slow, so it's right. Whenever we use third-party library,
Not particularly slow, but it adds a overhead because there's a compilation of what you're writing in terms of styling, right? So there's going to be an overhead, but not particularly slow performance.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think very insightful answers and good questions by everyone. Love it. And I think most of the questions ended up in the answer that it depends. And yeah, so yeah, thank you so much for speaking and attending. And we'll take photographs probably for the speakers first, and then we'll call everybody here. Is that the plan, Sana? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you.